David was a man who had lost everything. He had a family once, his wife Emily and their young daughter Sarah. But life had become a constant battle with mounting debts, overdue bills, and creditors who never let up. His small business, once thriving, had been brought down by an unexpected economic downturn. He had tried everything to keep his head above water, borrowing from friends, asking for extensions, and even selling whatever little he had left. But it was never enough. The weight of it all became unbearable. His house was on the verge of being taken away, and he could no longer provide for his family. David would wake up every morning with a hollow feeling in his chest, a feeling that grew stronger with each passing day. The relentless pressure felt like an endless tide, pushing him deeper into despair. He began to think that life would never get better. No more worrying about bills, no more shame, no more disappointing his family. Just peace. One cold evening, after receiving yet another threatening call from a creditor, David made up his mind. He needed a break from everything. He drove to the outskirts of the city, to a quiet spot by the river where no one would find him. He parked his car and sat in silence, staring at the dark water below. His hands trembled as he thought about how his family might be better off without him. As he sat there, feeling overwhelmed, a figure approached. An older man dressed in simple clothes stood in front of him. He looked peaceful, his eyes full of wisdom, and there was an aura about him that seemed to calm the restless air. David, surprised to see anyone, wiped his tears. "Why are you here?" David asked, his voice breaking. The older man smiled gently. "I could ask you the same. What brings you to this lonely place?" David's voice cracked. "I've lost everything. My family, my dignity, my future. I'm in so much debt, there's no way out. I can't go on anymore." The older man's eyes softened. "Life has its ups and downs, David, but the answer is never giving up. You think your life is insignificant now, but I assure you, it's far from it." David laughed bitterly. "You don't understand. You don't know what it's like to be trapped in a never-ending cycle of debt. The creditors are always calling. The bills are piling up. I can't see a way out. I'm just a burden on my family. I feel like it will never get better." The older man sat down next to him, looking at the river. "I understand more than you think. I have walked through pain, suffering, and loss too. But the value of life is not in what you have or what you owe. It's in the ability to keep going, even when everything seems lost." David shook his head. "But what's the point? I have no money, no way of paying these debts. I can't even provide for my daughter anymore. She deserves better than me." The older man turned to him. "Money is just a tool. It comes and goes. But life is precious. You may not see it now, but your family needs you. They need your strength, your love, and your will to keep going. Not just your money." David stared at the older man, a glimmer of doubt creeping into his heart. "But what can I do? How can I fix all of this?" The older man smiled gently. "Start with the next step. Don't think about the mountain of problems. Think about what you can do today. You've been carrying the burden alone, but you don't have to. Reach out for help. Talk to those who care about you. There is always a way forward, David, as long as you are willing to try." David remained silent for a long time. The river flowed gently, its quiet rhythm somehow comforting. His thoughts swirled, but something about the older man's words stayed with him. Finally, David spoke, his voice softer now. "I don't know if I can do it, but I'll try. I'll go back and face things. Maybe I don't need to do it alone." The older man nodded. "That's all anyone can do. Live each day, one step at a time. The road may be hard, but you are never truly alone. Never forget that." With that, the older man stood up and began to walk away. David watched him for a moment, but when he looked again, the figure had disappeared. It was as if he had never been there at all. But David wasn't alone anymore. Something inside him had changed. He wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he felt the smallest spark of hope. He drove home that night, not with the weight of the world on his shoulders, but with a resolve to fight. He would face the debt. He would work harder. He would ask for help. And most importantly, he would not give up. David knew now that money could be earned again, but life, his life, was something worth saving.